The snow was already 6 inches deep, the engine idling in the driveway, and the fine was sitting on the doorstep. But nobody knew that in 48 hours, the woman who wrote it would be begging the same man she fined for the keys to his truck. The morning Marcus Oyelaran got the fine, the sky was the color of old pewter, and the temperature had dropped to 11 degrees overnight. He had started his truck at 6:15, same as every Tuesday, because the commute to the county hospital took 40 minutes on clear roads and closer to an hour when the world iced over the way it had a habit of doing in Crestfield, Pennsylvania, every January without apology. He was a surgical technician, which meant that when Dr. Anita Ferrara called for a kit at 7:30, the instruments had better be warm, sterile, and present. That was the whole of his professional philosophy. Show up, be ready. He came back inside, poured a second cup of coffee, and checked his phone while Nadia, his wife, moved through the kitchen with the quiet efficiency of a woman who had 17 years of marriage in her bones and knew better than to speak before Marcus had his first full swallow. She was a second-grade teacher, and her school was already on a 2-hour delay. She watched the snow through the window above the sink with the expression of someone who had already negotiated a truce with the weather and come out neutral. "Plow came through?" she asked. "Just the main road. Crestfield Court is still packed." She nodded and poured her own coffee. At 6:42, Marcus went back out to check the defrost progress on the rear windshield and found a white envelope tucked under his wiper blade. For a half-second, he thought it was a flyer. The pizza place on Harmon Street was aggressive about their Tuesday specials. But the envelope was heavier than a flyer, and when he pulled it free and tore it open, standing in 11-degree air in his house slippers, the words HOA violation notice came at him in bold, dark ink like a declaration of war. He read it twice. He read it a third time because he was the kind of man who did not like to be wrong about what he was reading. Violation: idling of personal motor vehicle in residential driveway exceeding 5 minutes. This constitutes a noise and air quality nuisance in violation of Crestfield Commons HOA regulations. Section 7, paragraph 3b. Fine assessed, $85. Repeat violation fine, $200. Please remit payment within 14 days. The notice was signed. Paulette Gresh, HOA Board President, Crestfield Commons Homeowners Association. Marcus stood in his driveway in his slippers in 11 degrees and read the name at the bottom of that page and felt something move through him that was not quite anger and not quite disbelief, but somewhere in the exact middle, a kind of stunned recognition that the world could, in fact, still surprise him with its pettiness. He knew Paulette Gresh. Everyone on Crestfield Court knew Paulette Gresh. She was 61 years old, retired from a career in insurance compliance, and she had moved into number 14, the corner unit with the elaborate seasonal wreaths and the pressure-washed driveway, approximately 4 years ago. And in those 4 years, she had transformed the HOA from a quiet administrative body that handled snow removal contracts and the occasional fence dispute into something that functioned more like a small municipal government with her as its elected and enthusiastically self-appointed head. The previous president, a retired engineer named Howard Blank, who wore the same fleece vest from October through April, had run the HOA with the energy of a man whose primary ambition was to keep things from getting worse. He approved the budgets, renewed the landscaping contracts, and stayed out of people's personal lives with the discipline of someone who had learned, through long experience, that the alternative was exhausting. When Howard moved to Arizona to be near his grandchildren 2 years ago, Paulette had run for president unopposed because no one else wanted the job, and the results had been immediate and transformative and, depending on where you stood, either a vast improvement or a sustained administrative nightmare. She had introduced the online violation portal. She had commissioned an updated regulations booklet, 47 pages, spiral-bound, and distributed a copy to every household. She had organized a welcome committee for new residents and a seasonal beautification committee for existing ones, and both committees were chaired by Paulette Gresh. She had increased the landscaping contract, added a newsletter, created a Facebook group, and added 3 new subsections to the noise ordinance that effectively prohibited leaf blowers on Sunday mornings, string lights that blinked, and now, apparently, the warming of one's personal vehicle in one's own driveway. Marcus had received 2 previous warnings. The first, 11 months ago, for a trash bin left at the curb for 48 hours instead of 24 because he had worked a double shift and forgotten. The second, 6 months ago, for a basketball hoop installed in the driveway without a permit from the HOA, a permit that required a $25 processing fee and a 21-day review period, and which Marcus had submitted and received approval for, but which Paulette had initially flagged because the submission form had been filled in blue ink instead of black. He had said nothing about either of those. He had rolled his eyes, told Nadia, and moved forward because that was what a reasonable person did with low-level institutional friction. He filed the paperwork, paid the fee, used black ink. But $85 for warming his truck on an 11-degree morning before driving to a hospital where people's lives depended on him being present and functional, that was a different category of thing entirely. He went back inside. He set the notice on the counter. He looked at Nadia. She read it. She set it back down. She looked at him with the expression of a woman choosing her battles strategically. She watched from her window, Nadia said. You know she did. She timed it, Marcus said. 5-minute rule. She stood at her window with a stopwatch and timed my truck. Or she has one of those apps that sends her phone a notification when it detects engine noise. He stared at her. She mentioned it in the newsletter, Nadia said, with a tone of profound resignation. November issue, page 3. Marcus went to work. He did not pay the fine that day. He drove carefully on the packed snow of Crestfield Court and turned onto the plowed main road and thought about the 47-page regulations booklet and the noise detection app and the spiral binding, and felt the specific compound fatigue of a man who was being managed by someone with too much time and too little perspective. At the hospital, he told his colleague Desmond Webb about it during the 10-minute window between the first and second procedures of the morning. Desmond was a tall man from North Carolina who had opinions about everything and delivered them with the steady rhythm of someone who had been practicing for a long time. $85, Desmond said, for warming your truck. In my own driveway. On a day when it was 11 degrees. 11.4 according to my weather app. Desmond shook his head slowly. You need to go to the next HOA meeting. The next HOA meeting is February 9th. Then you go February 9th and you read the regulation out loud and you ask her, in front of the whole room, what section of the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code or the EPA guidelines she is using to justify that fine, because I guarantee you she wrote that herself and there is no legal basis for it whatsoever. Marcus knew Desmond was right. He also knew that the last person who had confronted Paulette at an HOA meeting, a man named Gerald Fassbinder who had disputed a fence variance, had received 3 additional violation notices in the following 2 weeks, covering his front porch light wattage, the height of his ornamental grasses, and the placement of his recycling bin relative to his mailbox. The HOA had an appeals process that required a $50 filing fee and a 30-day waiting period, and the violations stayed on your record during appeal. It was a system designed to exhaust resistance. Paulette had not built it accidentally. Marcus paid the $85 that Friday. He paid it through the online portal, and in the notes field he wrote, "Payment made under protest. I reserve all rights." He did not know if that notation accomplished anything legally. It accomplished something for him psychologically, which was enough for that particular Friday. What he did not know, what no one on Crestfield Court knew yet, was that the National Weather Service had, on that same Friday afternoon, issued a winter storm watch for their county covering the following Tuesday through Thursday. The models had been inconsistent all week, which was why the watch had not been upgraded to a warning. But the atmospheric setup was what the meteorologists called concerning. A deep low-pressure system moving up from the Gulf, colliding with Arctic air pushing down from Canada, and the interaction between those two systems producing the kind of snow event that the region got maybe once every 8 or 10 years. By Sunday, the watch had become a warning. By Monday morning, it had been upgraded to a blizzard warning, the first one issued for Crestfield County in 11 years. Nadia saw it on her phone at breakfast and called the school district's information line and confirmed that all schools were closed for Tuesday and Wednesday. She then looked at Marcus with the particular expression she reserved for moments when the universe appeared to be organizing itself in interesting ways. "The blizzard," she said. "I saw it. They're saying 30 inches. I saw that too." Paulette Gresh, Nadia said slowly, drives a 2019 Lexus sedan. Marcus looked up. "Rear-wheel drive," Nadia said. "I noticed when she parked it in the visitor lot at the meeting last fall. Very clean, very shiny, completely wrong for this kind of weather." He thought about that for a moment. Then he thought about something else, something practical and immediate and human, and he set his coffee down and went to the garage to check his snowblower. The machine was a commercial-grade 2-stage unit that he had bought 3 winters ago, after the back-to-back storms of that February had left him with a herniated disc from shoveling. It was orange and heavy and capable of throwing snow 8 feet in any direction, and he maintained it the way he maintained the instruments at work, with regularity, with care, with the understanding that the moment you neglected a tool was the moment it failed you. He checked the oil, tested the choke, ran it briefly in the garage to make sure the auger engaged cleanly. Everything worked. He also had, in the back corner of the garage, a set of tire chains for the truck, the heavy-duty kind, not the lightweight cables, that he had bought during a supply run 2 winters ago and never needed. He hung them on their hook and confirmed they were still in good condition. He was, by nature and by training, a man who prepared. Not dramatically, not with speeches. He simply looked at the weather, considered what was coming, and made sure he had what was needed. It was the same instinct that made him good at his job. The inventory check before the surgery began, the backup instrument tray positioned before it was required, the quiet certainty that when chaos arrived, preparation was the only honest response. The storm came on Tuesday morning. It did not arrive the way storms were supposed to arrive in the movies, building slowly, warning through increasing wind, giving the dramatic score time to develop. It arrived the way real blizzards arrived, already fully formed at dawn, as if the sky had made a decision in the night and was simply executing it now. Marcus woke at 5:15 to a world that was entirely white and entirely loud with wind, and the snow was already 8 inches deep and falling at a rate that made the streetlights look like they were burning underwater. He stood at the bedroom window for a long moment. Nadia slept behind him with the deep, uncomplicated sleep of a woman who did not have to be anywhere. The hospital had activated its emergency staffing protocol. Marcus had received the text at 4:52 a.m. All essential personnel were required to report unless road conditions made travel physically impossible. He was essential personnel. He dressed. He went downstairs. He ate standing at the counter, toast, black coffee, a banana, and watched the snow through the kitchen window. The drifts along the fence were already knee-high. The truck would need 10 minutes minimum, maybe 15, to clear and warm sufficiently to be safe to drive. He went out at 5:45. He started the truck. He went back inside and stood at the living room window and watched the snow fall and counted nothing, timed nothing, because he was a person going to work in a blizzard and not a person with a stopwatch and an app. At 6:02, he emerged with his ice scraper and cleared the windows. At 6:10, he backed carefully down the driveway, engaged the four-wheel drive, and made his way out of Crestfield Court and onto roads that were passable but barely, and drove 47 minutes to the hospital through conditions that required his complete and undivided attention. He did not see Paulette Gresh watching from her window, but she was there. She had been up since 5. She too had received communications about the storm, though hers were not from a hospital emergency protocol, but from the HOA's weather monitoring service. A subscription she had added to the annual budget last March over the objection of 2 board members, alerting her that conditions in the community would require monitoring. She had made herself a pot of tea and settled at her front window with her tablet and her notepad and her violation log, because Paulette Gresh believed, with the conviction of someone who had built her entire adult identity around institutional order, that emergencies were precisely when rules mattered most. She had watched Marcus start his truck. She had noted the time. She had noted that the vehicle idled for approximately 22 minutes, a significant escalation from the previous violation, and she had opened the online portal and entered the data with the satisfying efficiency of someone doing exactly what they believed they were put on earth to do. The fine this time was $200. Repeat violation. She submitted it at 6:08 a.m., while the snow fell at 3 inches per hour and the wind chill sat at -7. She did not think about where Marcus Oyalaran was going. She did not think about what he did for a living or why he might need his vehicle to be warm and functional in a blizzard. Those considerations were not part of Section 7, Paragraph 3b. By noon on Tuesday, 21 inches had fallen. By 4 in the afternoon, 26. The plows had stopped running at 2 because the snow was accumulating faster than they could clear it, and Crestfield Court, a private road maintained by the HOA, not the county, had received no attention whatsoever because the HOA's snow removal contract covered 1 plowing per 12-hour period in normal conditions and explicitly excluded blizzard events above 18 inches without a special service call, which Paulette had not authorized because she had not expected to need it and because the special service call cost $400. The street was, by Tuesday evening, impassable. Paulette discovered this at 6:17 p.m. when she attempted to drive to her sister Renata's house 2 miles away. Renata had called 3 times during the afternoon because their elderly mother, who lived with Renata, had been showing signs of respiratory distress since morning, and Renata was worried and asking Paulette to come and see for herself because Renata always needed Paulette to see for herself before she would accept that something was serious. Paulette backed the Lexus down her driveway with the confident efficiency of a woman accustomed to having the right answer, turned onto Crestfield Court, and immediately felt the rear end slide left on the unplowed surface. She corrected. The tires, standard all season, appropriate for normal winter conditions, found no grip. She moved forward 6 feet, felt the rear slide again, corrected again, and then made the error that all rear-wheel drive sedan drivers made on unplowed snow when they were in a hurry. She accelerated slightly to push through. The rear tires spun freely, and the car drifted sideways and settled into the snowbank at the edge of the road with the quiet, definitive finality of a ship running aground. She sat for a moment in the sudden stillness. The wipers moved. The heater blew. Outside, the snow fell without comment. She tried reverse. The tires spun. She tried forward. The tires spun. She tried rocking. Forward, reverse, with the systematic desperation of a woman who had read the owner's manual and retained the relevant sections. The car did not move. She called Renata. I'm stuck. Stuck where? In my own street. The road hasn't been plowed. A silence on Renata's end that contained, if one was listening carefully, an entire editorial opinion about HOA management decisions. Can you call someone? Renata asked. I'm calling the snow removal company. She called the snow removal company. The snow removal company told her their next available service window was Thursday morning. She told them this was an emergency. They told her their definition of emergency was a different definition than hers, and that their Thursday morning window was non-negotiable. She called 3 towing companies. 2 did not answer. The third told her they were not dispatching during active blizzard conditions, and she could call back when the storm ended, estimated sometime Wednesday. She sat in the car for 4 minutes, which was not a long time in ordinary circumstances, but felt considerably longer when the temperature outside was in the single digits, and the car, which had been running long enough to be warm, would eventually stop being warm if she stayed much longer. She needed help. She needed it from someone nearby, someone with the right equipment, someone she had not. She searched her recent memory. Offended. The list was shorter than she would have preferred. She looked down the street. The lights in the Oyalaran house were on. She could see the orange snowblower in the garage through the gap where the door was not fully closed. She sat with that for another 30 seconds. Then she got out of the car, pulled her coat tight, and walked, wading through calf-deep snow in her good boots, toward number 7. She knocked. The porch light came on. The door opened, and Nadia Oyalaran stood in the frame in a sweater and reading glasses, a novel held loosely in one hand, with the expression of a woman who had been expecting something but not exactly this. Mrs. Gresh, Nadia said. I need help, Paulette said. She had practiced being direct her entire professional life. It did not feel like a virtue at this particular moment. My car is stuck. I need to get to my sister's house. My mother isn't well. Nadia looked at her for a moment with eyes that saw everything and said nothing about most of it. Marcus isn't home, she said. He's at the hospital. He went in this morning. Paulette processed this. He drove in this? He's essential personnel, Nadia said. He goes when they call him. Something shifted in Paulette's face, a small, involuntary recalibration, the kind that happened when information arrived that didn't fit the existing model and the model had to bend. I have the snowblower, Nadia said. I know how to use it. I can clear enough of the road for you to get out if we can get your car unstuck first. But we'd need boards or mats under your tires for traction, and I'd need 20 minutes. Paulette stared at her. You would do that. Your mother is sick, Nadia said simply. Come inside while I get my coat. Part 2 began with the snowblower's engine turning over in the dark. Nadia had learned to run the machine the previous winter, when Marcus had been called in for an emergency procedure on the same day a 14-inch storm had buried the driveway. She had read the manual, watched 2 YouTube videos, and concluded that the machine was not complicated. It was simply heavy and loud and required a certain physical commitment to operate correctly. She had cleared the driveway in 40 minutes and felt, when she finished, the specific satisfaction of a task completed through competence rather than luck. Now she ran it down Crestfield Court at 7 p.m. in blizzard conditions, cutting a path through 26 inches of accumulated snow while Paulette Gresh walked behind her with a flashlight and said nothing, which Nadia interpreted as a form of gratitude she was not yet ready to articulate. She cleared a track to the Lexus, then cleared 6 feet in front of and behind the car. She found 2 rubber-backed floor mats in her garage and wedged them under the rear tires. She showed Paulette the technique. Slow acceleration, no spinning, steady pressure, and stood in the snow watching while Paulette backed the car free with glacial caution, and the tires found the mats and held, and the car moved. Go straight to Renata's, Nadia said. Don't stop for anything. The main road should be better. Paulette paused with her window down, the heater running, snow falling on her bare head. She looked at Nadia with an expression that was not soft exactly, but was genuinely stripped of something it had been carrying before. "Thank you," she said. "Drive carefully," Nadia said. She watched the Lexus move down the cleared track and turn onto the main road and disappear. Then she went back inside, knocked the snow off her boots, poured herself a glass of wine, and called Marcus. He answered on the second ring from somewhere inside the hospital that sounded hollow and far away.